Bruce asked, as someone who values traditional masculinity, how do you think modern society's changing expectations of men impact our self-image and identity? There's
That's a loaded question.
That's
there's
a
a
big
lot of
question.
perspectives. Like we have to, we'd have to like see what the expectation is, because I think different people have different expectations of what man is.
Yeah.
But if we go with traditional, like really traditional, I guess the bare basic thing is like man has a job, man provides for family. And if we throw the woman as like the primary
Family, caregiver, support.
child caregiver.
Yeah, the way I think about this is I think there's some core values that men traditionally should live their life by. Honor being like one of the most important things. And there's this idea of like we as men understand what honor means to some degree. It's like honoring our fathers, our names, honoring a certain lifestyle, a belief set. Like honor is very ingrained into men. And there's a doctor, Allison Armstrong, who says that women don't actually have any honor because of the way that we evolved. Men were required to conform to like a moral code or a value set or like a band of brotherhood. And like a bunch of men get together and we say, you do this, you don't do this. You do this, we fucking kill you. You're cut out of the group. You blah, blah, blah. Right? Like,
Which is so much worse, like getting cut out.
Yeah, 100%. So there's like a constraint that is the code of honor, and you have to live within that. And she talks about how women don't have that because throughout history, they're like, basically the way that they survived and stayed alive was just to conform to whatever the honor code of the leaders were, of the men were.
If that became a new leader, that would become
Right.
honored.
So
to
as,
the new,
as you like, if you have one group of like, if the fucking Romans are out here conquering all of the freaking, different tribes back in the day, whatever that honor code was of that tribe, the men are killed. Now the woman just conforms to the honor code of
To
like
survive.
the Romans or whatever. So it's very interesting. But I think throughout all of masculine evolution, there's been a code of honor that you have to subscribe to. So I think honoring our value set, honoring our communities, our brotherhood, whatever that is critical. I think every man has a sense of duty to protect and provide for their family and their loved ones. I think it's every man's responsibility to become strong so that they can follow an honor code and fulfill their duty. So strength is mentally, physically, emotionally, like being able to provide that strength for the people that they take care of. Courage. I think throughout history, men have been called to step into dangerous and challenging situations, places of life or death or fear. I think we have to operate from a code of courage. And then I would say, loyalty is a big one as well, right? And loyalty and honor kind of go together, but they could be different in the sense that we're loyal to a code, to a brotherhood, to a family, to a community. So I'd say honor, duty, strength, courage, and loyalty. I think that would be what I would classify as like traditional masculine values. And then that creates the framework for us to live our life in a strong, courageous, honorable way where we have the facility inside of us, mental, emotional, physical strength to be able to protect and provide for our family. I think today those values aren't as ingrained or as important. Like, what are men honorable to today when someone is telling them that they can have anything that they want, they can do whatever they want, they can, they don't have to protect and provide anybody, they don't have to do anything but be selfish, right? So I think we're living in a world where hedonism and pleasure seeking is kind of the primary driving force for most people. And there's a lot of selfishness that exists in our society through selfie culture, social media culture, etc. So when you don't have something to be honorable to, the only thing that you're honoring is yourself. And that turns into like very ego-driven, self-serving driven behaviors. So I think that's a big problem. There isn't like this call to arms or to strength in the world today. Like there isn't this idea of being mentally, physically, and emotionally strong. It's actually, I think, encouraged to be the other thing. Oh, you need to be able to be in touch with your emotions and talk about how you feel and express yourself, and it's okay to be sad and all these things. That's not to say that men can't feel emotions, but when men don't have control over their emotions, they fucking go violent. They get violent. They shoot up things. They fucking like the weakest men in society are the ones that create the most heinous crimes, in my opinion. They're the ones that rape, that kill, that resort to all sorts of terrible behaviors because they don't feel any power and they're driven by their emotions. But I think in general, I think there's a big, and this is something that I talk a lot about through kind of the whole entitled to nothing stuff, is when we don't have any power, when we feel powerless in our life, when life is, when we're in a state of chaos where we feel like we don't control our surroundings or our environment, when we just don't feel seen or heard and we don't feel like we're important or we have any control of things, that's where we're at our worst. And I think the way that you transcend that situation is by having a sense of honor, is by having a duty that you're going to fulfill, by working to be mentally and emotionally strong, and then having a community of men like we were just talking about that you're loyal to, that hold each other accountable to push and grow. So I don't even remember what the original question was. I know it was about masculinity and how now it's like we're losing track of that. I think we're losing track of what traditional masculinity means is because we're in a new era where how we're conditioned to behave is very, very different than at any other point in time in history. And so we don't have to have the same moral or honor or values that we used to. And so I think people are like really trying to find out what it means. And then one of my beliefs is, I know I'm on my soapbox here and I'm getting long-winded, but one of my beliefs is if you don't define who you are and who you want to be, the world is going to misinform you. So now we have a lot of people that they don't even conceptually know that they could go out and define, I want to be this type of man. I'm going to live my life with these types of values. These are the types of behaviors I'm going to do. These are the types of behaviors I'm not going to do. That's not like something that's taught to most people. So what do? We model behavior of others. And whether, you have a certain lifestyle or celebrity or athlete or particular person that you like, oh, that guy's cool, I'm going to look up to him. We start to model some of those behaviors that we see in the world. And unfortunately, there's a fuckload of really bad behaviors and, quote, celebrities or people that are influencers that are not modeling behaviors that I think actually promote the fulfillment of being a man.
Yeah. Mr. Beast.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I don't know where to go from there. There's a lot out there to try to unpack some of that.
Yeah, just to how do you think, I just want to say it again. How do you think modern society's changing expectations of men impact our self-image and identity? And I think that's true. I think the expectation today is, bare minimum expectation, every branch has its own thing, but men have to be more vocal with their emotions. They have to be more vulnerable in a way that's goes away from the traditional sense, and it makes men uncomfortable, and some of them dig their heels in I don't want to do that, but I don't know.
And when you're saying they have to be, you're saying they're expected to based on societal norms of how masculinity is kind of transcended from traditional masculine values to the world we live in today.
And when we say societal norms, I'm just talking it's the loudest voice. You're saying men need to be this way, but that's the only voice that's most of America is very middle of the road with everything.
But the vocal ones are on that.
Yeah, the vocal ones are saying this, but just know 50% of America doesn't care on the ends of the spectrum. They just are thinking about themselves.
Yeah, it's obviously fascinating. I think we can peel back a lot of layers here. I think back of, you look at pre-industrial revolution, you look at when we were working in the crops and the fields as Americans, boys were raised by men, right? They had leaders, they had fathers, uncles, grandfathers that they learned skills from, work ethic and masculine traits from their immediate family members being male. You go now we're working in factories, now we're like school systems, now fathers are going off to work. And a lot of boys were raised by their mothers, and a lot of boys were then into schools, which are predominantly, women at the time and still. And so it's interesting to kind of look back in history and see how I think a lot of the men today weren't properly raised by men and really given that rite of passage into manhood, right? You don't become a man because you're suddenly got hair on your balls, right? You become a man through your growth and evolution and your learnings. And I think if you look at a lot of cultures around the world, it's a really sacred process to become a man. A lot of tribes, you go back in history, a lot of areas around the world. In American culture, we don't have that transfer of manhood. And I think to your point of like, if you don't know who you are, the world can misinform you. If you're seeing what's going on social media and stuff, you can be misinformed about what you should be doing, how you should be acting. And if you don't have a strong role model or male role model to help you kind of learn what it means to be a man, you can be misinformed. And the loud ones, to your point, those are the ones that are creating the content and speaking out and changing the expectations. So it's really fascinating because I think we're seeing a lot of men today who didn't have that true masculine leader that they can learn from and kind of transition into manhood. And that creates, I don't want to say weak men, but it creates men that don't know who the fuck they are, and they can be misinformed through kind of what's trending or what's current or whoever's got the loudest fucking voice that's steering them in that direction.
Yeah. I think serving others is a trait that men should always have. Having honor, being loyal, being trustworthy. Those are all things that, like, you know, if society's leaning away from it, don't go that way. That's never good for anyone.
Yeah, like what?
Hold true to your values.
What in modern U.S. culture is telling men that they need to have a sense of honor or duty to something? Like, what is that? It just generally speaking.
Maybe
you know?
the NFL, but still not quite. Not quite. It's
It's
I mean, in sports, maybe like you would get that playing
yeah,
sports or
in
through
sports,
things,
but like
right?
every player's not even loyal to that team because they're gone after like what,
Yeah.
2 or
That's
3
changed.
years?
Yeah. Gone are the days where you're like on the team and that's your ride or die. Like
Yeah.
you're, you know what I mean?
Steph Curry is like forever like ingrained in San Francisco because it's where he was drafted. That's where he stayed. That's where he's won his
That's
championships.
rare in the world we live in today.
Very rare.
20 years ago, like you get drafted, like you're a Phoenix Sun, you're a Chicago Bulls. Like you identify, you're part of that tribe, and that's who you're going to be with for your career for the most part.
Yeah. Who do people love
doesn't happen.
more, Steph Curry or LeBron James?
Yeah,
At least in the cities where they reside.
yeah, yeah.
Like
that's
as soon as LeBron James is out of LA people won't care about him. If Steph Curry moved away, people would be heartbroken.
yeah. But where else do you get it? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I
else
don't
do you
know.
get it?
When I think about just broadly in our society, right? There isn't a like conforming code. We used to be a very patriotic country, right? Like fucking America. We love living here, land of the free, home of the brave. 20 years ago, right? Like I pledge allegiance to the flag. Like I mean, I did that shit my entire childhood growing up in school. And so there was at least this honor or duty to our country. That's gone. Like fucking you watch the riots and the crazy shit that's going on. Half the people talk about how they hate living here and they hate it, but yet they don't want to go anywhere else. You know, so it's like where the only place you get it are there isn't, I guess maybe a better way to say it is there isn't a global or universal code of honor or duty in our country or maybe even in the world today. Everything is very siloed into the individual identities, right? And so then that's where the polarization happens. Oh, well, I believe this party is right. So my honor or my duty is to like follow them blindly with all things because that's the only thing in my life that is has a sense of honor or sense of conduct. And so I'm just going to do what they say or I'm going to believe this. I'm not going to allow myself to get outside of anything else. So it can compound in a negative way if you're in a very, I think, if you're in a vacuum, if you will, right? An echo chamber, sort of speak.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think it just goes back to people not really being intentional with how they want to live their life and also having bad role models and not knowing or being taught how to grow up with a common set of values.
Good stuff. Thanks, Bruce.
Thanks, Bruce.
I think we answered his question, right?
We
best
we
we
said
could.
some words.
Bruce,
I hope
hold
that
true
helps.
to your values. Hold true to values that men
Yeah.
hold dear. Honor,
I
service.
think if we were to sum it up, I think traditional masculinity was living by a specific code of values or code of conduct. And now, like modern masculinity has no specific code of conduct and very little role models that are actually leading in a way that we would want to follow.
Or at least role models who are broadly advertised.
Yeah.
Yeah.